Next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever, and we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars, and we're going to be giving a nice dividend to the people.
President Trump says to expect $2,000 refund checks next year using the revenue generated from tariffs. This as the Congressional Budget Office recently reduced its tariff revenue projections, while the Supreme Court will soon rule on the president's emergency powers authority that he used to impose them. For more, let's bring in U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate your time this morning.
Happy to be here. Good to see you.
You too. So, Secretary Bessent said that basically if the Supreme Court case does not go the administration's way, they do have a backup plan. He said, quote, "We can recreate the exact tariff structure with sections 301, 232, and 122, meaning that if the emergency powers are found to be invalid, you can basically recreate what you're doing now with these other mechanisms." But my question to you is, will that outcome, will that case at all upend the president's promise to issue Americans dividend checks as part of tax refund season?
Well, what I would say is that tariffs are going to be part of the policy landscape. They are now. They will be going forward. It's real revenue. So I think that, the president, between the tax bill, the increased tax base we expect, and the tariff revenue, I think that the president's plans to, find a way to provide some of that wealth back to Americans. I think he'll find a way to get that on track. I don't know what the specific final number will be, et cetera. But I think that the economy is growing at such a rate, and the tariff program will continue such that the president will have lots of options.
How realistic is it, though, that people will actually be getting checks, tariff dividend checks, when they file their taxes? I mean, that's right around the corner. January is next month. Deadlines in April. That could be just a few months from now, if you were to take him at his word.
I think a lot of. Sure, understood. Right. I think that right now what the White House is looking at is, what would be the appropriate amount of any kind of rebate, right? Again, we've had years of trade deficits where other countries are getting a net benefit. Time for our people to get a net benefit. There's a question about do you need legislation to do it? Some of this is essentially the Treasury Department, right? I put on tariffs, I can remove them, I can do deals. Secretary Bessent and Treasury, they kind of have the pot of money over there, and they work with Congress on how to allocate it and that kind of thing. I think your questions are the right ones to be asking, and it's under consideration in the White House right now.
Okay, great. Separately, on these, the trade framework, we've had some anecdotal evidence showing that potentially the job market could be weakening. You had the ADP releases coming out this week, but Kevin Hassett simultaneously pointed to 2 quarters of GDP growth and industrial production at an all-time high. But you're deep in these, trade negotiations, and I want to ask you, when do you think that that's going to translate to real economic growth? Are we going to see that in the numbers in 2026, or might it be 2027?
Well, we already see it now, as Kevin pointed out, and we'll see it next year too. First of all, in addition to the just GDP growth overall that Kevin mentioned, which of course some of that happens because of fewer imports, right? That's generated by the tariff structure. But we're also seeing an increase in real incomes, and that's really what we're getting at fundamentally with the trade program, is reshoring more jobs here. We're seeing industrial production continue at high levels. We're seeing good levels of capital goods expenditure and private investment. Those are the kinds of things that lead to the great jobs that we're talking about. Jobs in, we have pharmaceutical plants going up, we have semiconductor plants going up. We have the first, advanced semiconductor being built recently in Arizona. And so a lot of those jobs are going to, I think, show up next year, especially because you don't build a factory overnight, but you do build them over months and years, and those are all coming online soon.
How realistic is it that China will actually follow through with its commitments? Do you view the latest round of talks as something concrete, or is it being viewed with any skepticism this might be just another test from China?
Well, with China, it's always we verify and we monitor and we watch the commitments. The commitments are quite specific. they're about purchasing, a certain amount of soybeans, for example, through the rest of this growing season and then each of the next years. These are things that are quantifiable. The data are clear. We've already seen that the Chinese are getting to about a third of the way through their purchase commitment for this growing season. Part of the other commitments they've made have been to ensure that rare earths and critical minerals continue to flow to the United States. That's something we monitor as well. It's never perfect, but it's all going in the right direction, and we're seeing the kinds of flows that are keeping our factories open, keeping manufacturing going. So all of these things that we've agreed to with the Chinese recently are very concrete. We can monitor them with some ease, and so far we're seeing that they're in compliance.
Okay. When it comes to export controls, there was a remark this week from the NVIDIA CEO that the U.S. really should not be sending downgraded chips to China. Here's what he said.
Be able to compete around the world. The one thing we can't do is we can't degrade chips that we sell to China. They won't accept that. There's a reason why they wouldn't accept that. And so we should offer the most competitive chips we can to the Chinese market.
Is it smart to give China these advanced chips when there's always a risk they're just going to copy and steal it like we've seen them do in the past?
So with export controls, they're always fluid. As technology advances and technology becomes more accessible generally, you can adjust where your export control threshold lies. Obviously, the Trump administration agrees that the highest technology products, whether they're chips or other things, we have to be really careful about what we send to China or other countries or anybody. That being said, as the technology advances and becomes more widely available, you can adjust that, right? And that's something that's always happened. My own view is we need to be very cautious about this. It's great. We want companies' bottom lines to do well, but as policymakers, we need to make sure that the national security is placed first and foremost. And that's why you've heard President Trump talk about the types of chips that maybe would be restricted. And there's always an open discussion on where that threshold lies, and it changes over time.
All right, Ambassador Jamieson Greer, U.S. Trade Representative, thank you very much for joining us this morning on the Sunday Briefing. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.